Something that's been on my mind constantly recently is the death of Val Kilmer. He was a pretty big icon to me. And I've had icons that were dead before and then icons that were alive. And he seems to be the first one in that alive category that has transitioned into the dead side. And I can't help it. I keep thinking about him. And I rewatched his documentary about his life, Val, which is a great documentary film, and his films as well from the past. And I can't help but notice how young and alive and good looking and clever and charming he was in the films and the interviews. But there's no way I could have known that had he not participated in those things, had he not made the movies, had he not done the interviews. If anybody ran into him on the side of a street before he passed away, they would have just seen an old, decrepit man, in a bad state. But it's those movies that have preserved his memory, and I just think that's such a beautiful thing, and that's what art enables us to do, is to capture these memories and preserve them. And yeah, I've just been thinking about Val Kilmer a lot and how that man is gone.
I don't know who that is. I think I've heard of the name before, but I don't know who the person is. But I understand
Yeah,
the concept of watching somebody on a screen or on TV, finding out that they've passed and getting very attached to their story. I've had that with a few celebrities, not a lot, but a couple, especially when I hear about their stories. And unfortunately, in Hollywood, a lot of them met a tragic end and lived a very tragic life in the industry. So I can understand that feeling of, I don't know, it's a weird thing to explain, but I remember just feeling like I wish I could have helped this person, even though I didn't know the person at all. And they're just a face on a film screen. But I know, for example, people like I don't know if you know him, but the actor River Phoenix or
yeah.
Corey Haim, Jonathan Brandis. These are all actors from the late 80s, 90s who unfortunately, sadly ended up passing away. And I don't know, just their stories always, it made me sad. It always sat with me. It was very depressing, and many of them were depressed themselves. I know that, for example, like River Phoenix died from an overdose, and Jonathan Brandis died by suicide. So all of these stories that I would listen to and I would watch their films and I would just know what was going on behind the scenes. It was always heartbreaking. And knowing, I don't know why, it's like this unrealistic desire to have helped the person. It's like, I wish I could have been there when they were struggling, when they were children and they experienced these, not all of them, but a couple of them, or one person specifically, like Corey Haim, experienced very like the dark side of Hollywood. And I used to always think, man, I wish I could have been there when that happened and helped this child. So, and it's weird to think like that because again, you don't know these people. And I don't know, it's just, I mean, it's nice to know that there's a level of empathy within us when we hear these stories. But yeah, I think you just grow attached when you hear the tragedies, but you also see the entertainment and the joy that they brought on screen. And it's even sadder when they're children, when they started off as children, knowing maybe because I'm also like a filmmaker, so I understand there's a responsibility within the adults that they should have protected them and they should have took care of them. But yeah, I mean, I feel with you on that, on that concept. So
You really did surprise me when you said you didn't know who Val Kilmer was, but you know that by itself is so interesting because it shows me a perennial truth about how hollow immortality really is. I
Hmm.
mean, Val Kilmer has participated in such incredible roles, in such incredible films. He was a true creative, a true artist.
You
He
make
was
me
a
want to
true
Google.
bee. He pollinated with so many different big names and small names. I mean, he would. Did you say something?
I said I want to Google him now.
Oh, you want to Google him now? Yeah.
Um,
Um, he was the voice of the villain in Spider-Man: Edge of Time, the video game. I didn't even know that before. But even with all of these accomplishments that he's been a part of,
mhm.
you still don't know who he is. And that's the incredible thing. A person can do all these great things and people still won't know who they are. It's just a fact of life.
I
River
mean,
Phoenix, as you mentioned, there's people that don't know who that is either,
I was
even
about to
though he's
say
done
like,
some incredible work.
yeah, I was gonna say you could have easily not known any of the people I named, but I think we all have this concept of wanting to be remembered when we pass. But you know what? In Islam, in our deen, some of the people who are going to have the highest of paradise are people that were never known in this world, right? Like the stories that were remembered in the Quran or in the hadiths were of people who, at the time when they were alive, they would have been invisible to the majority of their society. So I think we also have to remember that the efforts that we put in to be remembered, we should think of it like, who do we want to remember us? Do we want it to be just thousands and thousands upon thousands of people? Or is it just the important ones, right? Do you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to remember you? Or do you want the whole population? And I think it's also, how do you want to be remembered, right? I would rather, because I think, especially, I keep bringing back the line of work, but when you're an artist, when you're in the film world, you want your work to be known. You want to be known. But I always remind myself that, first of all, inshallah, when the time comes, Allah will give what I need. He will give me what I need. But also, even if, God forbid, let's say I passed away before anybody got to know who I was or know my work, then is that really like the biggest deal if I did good in this life, even if it was in secret, even if it was just around a number of people? Would it matter if a million people, like if I had Elvis Presley fame for decades, or would I just want to be myself and have the amount of people that know me right now? But also I have my character. I have my faith. I do what I do and I pass away. So I think it's the importance of what you leave behind, even if only a few people know it? So
That's a really good reminder.
yeah, because we're really quick to want to be seen by the majority, even though we don't know what we're asking for. Like, does it really matter? I think that at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, does that really matter? But yeah.
Very insightful.
Yeah.
With that being
You're
said,
bringing the philosophical side out of me.
with that being said, is there any one project that you have where you feel like everything else, it's okay if I don't finish,
Mhm.
but if God forbid I passed away, I want this one thing to have at least been finished? And you don't have to share it specifically with me if it's a secret, but does that concept exist?
So I've actually released two short films that I'm very proud of, Iman and Kufia, which are both Palestinian related films. But if I could release, and it's something that I want to do in the future, inshallah, if I'm able to create and release one film that I could leave behind, it would be the feature film version of the short film Iman. So I would want to tell the Palestinian story of this young child. And I want to tell a period film, a Nakba film, where it emulates both a Palestinian story and a Muslim story. So I would say that would probably be the biggest project that I would want to leave behind. If I couldn't complete anything else or write anything else, that would be the one that I would want to leave behind.
Mm, yeah. Speaking of your short films,
Mhm.
what I liked about them, especially about Kafir, was the writing.
Thank you.
Francis Ford Coppola said, "It's the writing and the acting that makes the film. You got to have a good bit of both, and they have to be pretty strong." You did a really good job, especially with that one on both angles. Did you write that yourself?
I did, yeah, for both short films.
Yeah, like it just kept you and it kept me engaged. I remember. I was like, man, this is witty. How long did it take you to put that together?
So which short film are you talking about? Yeah, which one?
Sophia.
Sophia. That one was shot in 2 days. Well, less, in 2 days for a few hours. I would say it took a few months, but mostly because of certain parts of the post-production process that I wasn't able to complete until a certain time. And I think that I released it maybe June of 2024. So the edit itself wasn't the hardest part. It was just making sure that everything flowed properly. And honestly, it was a lot of the post sound mixing. So yeah, it took me a few
Well, I
months.
mean, I mean, outside of putting the actual short film together,
Mhm.
the writing. How long did
Oh,
it take you to
the
finish the
writing.
writing?
Uh, so it wasn't even the writing. It was because there were multiple drafts, like as a writer does. Usually with scripts, you have multiple drafts. So I feel like it took maybe a month, less than a month, where I was revising. And it wasn't me working on it constantly every single day. It was, okay, try to set an hour or two to write this. And then if I had other times during the week, I would do that. So I think that took around a month.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah. It's cool that you have these finished projects under your belt because I feel like a lot of people, and I've been here in this position myself before too, they claim to be creative, but then you wonder, what do you have under your belt to show for that?
Mhm.
And oftentimes it's not a whole lot. It's just a yearning to be creative. Nothing, many things started, little things finished. How do you take your projects from the beginning to the finish line?
Well, to kind of bounce off of what you said, I know that a lot of people stress about actually creating something. And I don't think you need to be creating a million things. I don't think you need to have multiple projects to be the artist that you are. There's actually very famous filmmakers that create maybe one film every 5 years. So I always say quality over quantity, first of all. And there's a beauty to taking it slow, right? Because art is influenced by life, our experiences, our dreams, our fantasies. So a lot of it comes from living, and you can't create if you don't live. Um, but when it comes to me and how I create, it's like I mentioned before, I usually just, if I have an idea, I sit down, can take me a while, but I write a script. When I finally have that final product, I try to rack up a crew. I mean, I haven't done it a million times. I have some short films under my belt that I've done by myself, and that's really quick to do. But when you're trying to get,
There was the
again,
one where you flipped the coin. I remember
yeah,
that
you
one.
saw one. Oh
That
my
was
God.
like a horror film.
That one, I'm happy to have made it because that's, again, a fun project that I had in mind. I didn't want to act in it though. It just kind of happened. But Alhamdulillah, I'm very happy that I,
Yeah, because the more you share, the more your skills grow. I was reading that
yeah,
from Rick Rubin, and do you feel
yeah,
that way about that particular one?
yeah. I mean, I think that I like it. I like the short film. I think it's just because I starred in it and I'm acting in it that it feels a little cringe to me to watch. But I feel like the story itself and the idea, and it's just a little short 2 minute video, 2 minute film. I like the idea. It's just because I was in it that I think I'm a little more about it. And just like I have another short film that I filmed, or well, I didn't film it, but we had a cinematographer film it with me and my sister when we were in the shed. We get locked in the
I've seen
shed.
that one as well.
Um, See, I love the concept. I loved that we did it, and because I've always wanted to see a sister film, I didn't think I would create one anytime soon. And the fact that I got to do it with my own sister was really fun. It was stressful. It was hot in that shed, but it was fun. But again, because we're nitpicking at our own performances, it could feel cringy. Just watching ourselves on screen can feel cringe. And our older work, our older projects, my older projects, when I look at it, I feel kind of cringe about it. The thing is, I could even feel that way with recent projects. Not cringe, but
Yes.
a nervousness. And because it's very subjective, right? Whether somebody likes your film or not is very subjective. Whether they like the writing or not is very subjective. So I still get that emotion, but I think I've gotten better at managing it because I've been doing it a little longer. Alhamdulillah. But yeah, I think with the creation of it, you just want to make sure that where I try to make sure that I have something that I'm really passionate about, a story that I like a lot. And after developing it, I take the time to find the people that would also be passionate about this. And we come together and inshallah like try to find time to film it. And then that's when I usually edit my own projects for the most part. And I work to edit it and complete it and then release it. So that's usually my process.
The cringe part really
Mm.
got to me.
Yeah.
When I create something, I do get attached to it
Hmm.
because I'm usually proud of what I've done. And sometimes I have to pause, detach, and realize, hey, this is done, and this is no longer for me. What, even if it's like a short film, for example, it's not going to help me to rewatch that 20 times. It's done. It's not for me anymore. It's time for me to move on to the next project and put my all into that. Have you gone through similar experiences where, despite the cringe, you rewatch your work again and again because you feel like it's so good?
Um, Alhamdulillah, I'm very proud of Kufia and Iman, even though there are moments where, of course, you're like, maybe we could have done this differently or this different.
Always, right?
But I feel like those moments where it's best to release, for me at least, is actually during production, not even when I'm done with the film. But this is in the sense of not me, really disassociating from the film, but disassociating with the idea that this film, everything that's in my head is exactly how the film is going to look like. When you're
Explain that for
collaborating,
a second. What do
yeah.
you mean release that production?
So I try to remind myself that the minute that I get into production, that we're filming, that I have a vision 100%. But it's that vision is going to be puzzled with everybody else's contributions because this is a collaboration. So you have cinematographers, you have sound people, you have actors, and they all like their main job is to pursue and create your vision. But it's again, it's never going to be like a copy and paste out of your head. I don't think it does because when you have so many people with their own ideas and things that they feel is best to implement into the film, it becomes this concoction that everybody helped shape rather than just this idea that you have in your head. It came alive, but it comes alive through the efforts and creativity of everybody, if that makes any sense. So, ideally, and what happens the most, of course, is they create your vision, but they're also adding their identities into their project. If it's that kind of project where people are really passionate about the work, they're also going to bring in their selves into the project. So you can tell, oh, I can see that this cinematography, if they know the cinematographer very well, the DP, I can see that this person brought a little bit of themselves in it. And it's all there just to emulate the work that you want done. But that's why I say I try to like latch off a little bit. I try not to bite so hard on the idea of this has to be exactly, exactly, exactly the way I have it in my head, if that makes any sense. That's what I meant by saying that.
Okay. Yeah, that does make sense. But once the project is complete, do you catch yourself in that trap of revisiting the work even after it's finished again and again and again, and then having to pause and say, you know what? This is free from me. I have to move on to the next thing.
I do watch my projects, not a crazy amount of times, but I have rewatched them. But yeah, it's like you said, there's never like, oh, I need to get away from that. If I need to focus on another project, I do. And the idea of having the memories and knowing that the work and the movies that I have done are still there, it's not an obstacle. It doesn't prevent me from wanting to pursue something else, right? It's just there and it's part of me and the stories that I've told. So if anything, I think it's an addition to the stories that I want to tell in the future. Because for myself, it's a reminder, hey, these are the movies that I want to create. These are the movies that I do. And these are the movies more of in the future, inshallah. These style films.
I find in my life that I'll have an experience or something and I'll realize uh, a truth. And then somehow I hear what I realized coming from the mouth of someone else in that time. So, like, a way to explain it is when I write, it's not fully me, it's also things that just get sent to me. And I can see vividly these images, and I am writing about what I'm seeing. And so it's like a collaboration with myself in the ether, as they say. And then, not long after that realization occurred to me, I heard David Lynch, which hopefully you know who he is.
Um, I think I do. Let me double check. Because I know the name. Again, I know the names.
Yeah, he's a famous movie maker as well. He passed away not too long
So
ago.
I know him, but I have to also see like the kind of films he made because my knowledge, ironically, on filmmakers and directors is not the highest of caliber. I know
And
people
that's
like
fine. That actually
Martin.
might even be an advantage, I think.
So yeah,
Can
I know
be.
some, but not a whole bunch
Mm.
by
It's
memory.
cool.
By
Cool.
memory,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where I was going though with David Lynch was at that time in my life where I realized that this is what's going on with me. I'd heard him say in an interview from years ago that when he's making a film and he's developing a story, it's like he's getting photographs, images from photographs sent to him, and he sees them, and he has to put the puzzle pieces together. He has to weave that story together just based on the little images that he gets.
Mhm.
What is this process like for you when it comes to creativity? How do you put it into words when the ideas come to you? Are they even coming to you, or you really just sit there and you make something up?
Wait, so the question is, am I getting something like outside of what I'm writing? So an additional motivation to my writing, something like that. Is that what you're asking?
Something like that.
Um, Sometimes randomly you get an idea and you start writing. But I feel like a lot of the times when I'm doing, and it's still kind of random, I would be walking. Walking, by the way, is a really good way to find
Yeah,
creativity yourself. So I would start thinking of an idea and then I start putting different details, thinking of what could be the details, what could be the scenes for this project, for this short film or for this film or for this show, whatever it is. I think in my experiences, weird things as well, but I would think maybe sometimes just by looking at lighting, the lighting of something. If I see the light come from the window, I'm like, it would be so cool if I shot a scene where there's moonlight and there's this really cool ambiance of blue light everywhere. But how do I create that? What story can I tell with that? Aside from that, I would say the main thing is just when something pops in your mind and you start piecing the puzzle. So you first get a concept, you get
the
a top,
puzzle. It's always
yeah,
the
piece of the
puzzle.
puzzle, and then other parts that you feel like would make it into like be attached with one another. So that's usually how my mind works when I'm creating.
Cool.
How
Yeah,
about you?
that's it.
I was about to say, how about you? Do you, when you're writing, do you feel the same?
when I'm writing, it very much does. I've become more conscious of the idea of the ether.
Hmm.
Ether is, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's just that realm, the unseen realm, the realm of muses, right? That things just kind of come to you.
Hmm.
And as a writer, that's how it's been. As far as I can consciously remember, that's what it is. It just kind of gets sent to me from beyond. And I think the more I participate in it voluntarily, the more it helps. So what I mean by that is I usually carry around a black notebook and I have my pen in my pocket all the time. And just by having that there, it's
Hmm.
like a visible expectation. Oh, well, you write. And
Hmm.
so it comes more easily because the visible expectation is there. So something like that.
That's actually really cool. I don't carry around a physical reminder to write, but I do have my phone. So when I have any ideas, I usually pull out my notes and just start writing them on my
Mm.
notes. So even if I look back at my notes right now, I would see a a page of just the different film ideas I have, different concepts, different log lines that can hopefully one day be something. So I find myself doing something similar in that sense.
Yeah, it's funny that we're talking about that because for me, when it comes to this stuff, I have one right here.
Mhm.
I actually got this because I saw Val Kilmer, of all people, in the Doors film. And when he plays Jim Morrison, that's how he is. He has like a little notebook and he's just writing in there. And I vividly remember seeing that and I was like, hey, well, I'm a writer. That seems like the thing I do. So that's where it came from. So interesting that that came up and that's where I got it from. Val Kilmer, his performance.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Do you, I know this question gets asked a lot, but I guess I'll put it this way. Is there a movie you've seen recently that you really like?
Actually, I watched Locked with my sister in theaters a few days ago. And I will say I haven't been to the cinema in a little bit. And just watching, well, having the opportunity to go and watch a movie can be hard because there's not a lot of good releases out. So I'm happy that I went to go check that film out. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's Bill Scar. It's literally based off of the what I forget. It's not El Salvador, Argentina. I think there's a film from Argentina called 4x4 of a guy who gets locked into locked into a car, and it's booby trapped because the guy was trying to steal from the car, and the owner of the car locks him inside and makes a vow that whoever the next person tries to steal from him, whoever he is he's going to make him suffer in the car. And Locked is a remake of that film. So I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun.
Hmm. I have not heard of it, but you said Bill Skarsgård's
I
in
would
there.
recommend, yeah, I would recommend that film. It's fun to watch. And if you haven't seen 4x4, I would watch that one first if you're able to, and then watch the new one so you can kind of see the parallels, but also see the differences. They definitely, I'm happy that they changed it up a little bit and it wasn't the exact same film because we have a problem in the film industry here where people just want to replicate the exact same story without any differences. Like, for some reason, you made it, it's going to be better.
And then the Indians replicate the American films.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. As much as I love the American culture and the films we make, I am finding that the Koreans
Oh,
have
yeah.
a very, they have a lot of original ideas, a lot of like novel things. And my dad is a huge fan of a lot of these stories. And he tells me, he's like, dude, they're making some good stuff out there. It's
Yeah.
very ingenious. And he's not wrong. And actually, for the first time in years, I saw the movie Parasite
Uh-huh.
and I was blown away. Me and him, we were like, man, that was a good film.
Yeah. It's a really good movie. I think I've always said this, but I'm a big K-drama fan, and I have been for a few years now. But when I used
Does
to
that
intro,
include Squid Games?
I well, I kind of watched it. I think I because it was put on blast and it was so hyped up and so many people had watched it that I think I kind of stepped away and didn't watch it. And I've seen so many clips of the first season. So it's hard to not know what's happening because of everything I've already seen. But I think I kind of skimmed through it a little bit. I did watch the second season. I like the first one more, but if that happens, hopefully the third one will be even better. But
What's funny about Squid Games is, as you said, it was hyped. I remember at I got off from the metro
mhm,
and I was walking to my lab, which is on the other side of campus. And on the way, I ran into 10 different people I knew, and
mhm,
every single one of them mentioned Squid Games to me. It's like, wow, I got to check it out now.
mhm,
But interestingly, as much as my dad loves Korean content, he's just not into Squid Games.
mhm. I think it takes a kind of person to be into that kind of stuff. It's just like when Breaking Bad was huge. I loved Breaking Bad, but not everybody loves that show because it's a very hard watch. Even though there's a lot of comedic elements to it, there's a lot of high blood pressure, you know,
Yeah,
from
it's a
watching.
vibe. It is its own vibe.
So not everybody's gonna be into it with K-dramas, but I agree 100%. Like their content, their storytelling is very unique. And when I would introduce people, the idea of what K-dramas bring to cinema and the way that they create their cinema is the fact that they have very weird stories and, like you said, unique stories, but the storytelling they bring, it just works. The way that they end up creating shows. There's a show called I Am Not a Robot. I remember that was one of the first few dramas that I had watched. And it's literally about a guy with a human allergy and a woman who is paid to pretend she's a robot. So she would go and kind of stay with him. He would think she's a robot. And he falls in love with her, thinking she's a robot, but she's not. Thankfully, she's human. So in his allergies, like he would touch people, he would have a real physical reaction to people from his traumas. A lot of dramas base the stories and the characters, of course, off of their past traumas. There's always something that happened to the main character or the side character. So, and every time when I used to bring this up to somebody, they kind of look at you funny, but I tell them, trust me, watch it, sit down, you'll really enjoy it. And and yeah, I'm not big onto like the romance. K-dramas also are very big romance with the romance genre. They're very big with the romance genre. But that's probably my least favorite, even though a lot, majority of their shows have some sort of romantic element to it. But I'm more into the platonic love between siblings or best friends or, brothers or sisters. I'm into that kind of storytelling. So yeah, I mean, Squid Games was good. It was interesting. But for me, like for example, if you haven't seen it, there's a show called Weak Hero Class 1. They recently put it on Netflix, but I had watched it when it first came out a few years ago. And it really has to do with these friends, school bullying, school violence. This one character, the main character, who's kind of introverted and is alone into himself, but he befriends these two people that stick by him, and it's only 8 episodes, but there's this interesting dynamic between everybody. So that's something I would recommend to people. And there's a whole bunch of untapped cinema you can watch with Korean dramas and films. So I commend your dad for being a fan of that.
Yeah, yeah, no. We have watched some good stuff from the Koreans. They, as I said, and you have mentioned as well, the unique ideas. It's very interesting. I'm not too familiar with Arab cinema.
Yeah.
What is it like in the Arab world? Is it a big thing? Is it popping? Are you drawn
So
to it?
I don't watch a lot of Arab cinema, honestly, but
Does
my
it
dad,
even exist? I know that might be a
yeah,
stupid
no, it
question, but
does.
I'm
It, Egyptian films are very big. Syrian films. Well, for example, there's this drama called Bab el Hara, and it was first filmed
the
in Syria.
House of Hera. Is that what it means?
Bab el Hara. Bab, the
Or
door of
The door.
the door of the village, kind of.
Oh, okay.
Um, it's really very, what's the word? It's very dramatic. It has a very soap opera feel to it, but it was very popular when it came out. It was a Ramadan series. I remember it coming out every Ramadan, I think every day or every night. But 100%, yeah. For me, I mostly remember Egyptian cinema, but even films in Palestine, films come out of Palestine, films in Syria, films in Lebanon. I'm trying to think what else. So Arab films and cinema are a big thing. I just don't watch it often. My dad watches a lot of Egyptian cinema. Growing up,
Mm.
I would sit by his side seeing him watch Egyptian films. Like I think the film is called Dada Dudi or Adada Dudi, which is it's kind of similar to the film Mr. Is it Pink? Mr. Pink? Like the Pink Panther film? It's not the Pink Panther film, but the guy, you know who I'm talking about, who had to take care of the
Who's
kid.
so? Or take care of the kids.
Didn't he have to take care of the kids? Um, isn't it like pink something? Now I have to Google it. I'm always Googling when my when I have to remember a movie. Panther, Mr. Pink Panther. No. Yeah, I don't remember the movie name, but the Pink Panther movie. No, it's what is it? Isn't it called the Pink Panther? Yeah. I don't know if
Really?
I don't think it was that film actually.
Hmm.
But there's like a film where there's a character or somebody who has to take care of children. So it's similar to that. There's also a drama I used to watch called Sada, which is a woman or a young girl. Well, she's not young girl. She's a young woman who was in a coma for many years. And she wakes up in an arrested state with like her mind being like an 8-year-old child, but she's maybe a late teenager, maybe a young adult. I can't remember her age. So there's a lot of stuff coming out of the Arab world. And I would recommend a lot of the films there because they do a big thing that I love is watching films from different countries, different societies, because there's a relatability to everything, but there's also
It's the
something that
cultural.
they
It taps
take
into the
away.
culture of it. Like
Yeah,
there's
there's
this
always
quote.
something brought to the table with every
Mhm.
place you go to, every whether it's like you said, Asian content or South Asian content or Western content or Arab content. There's that cultural inclusion, but there's also just the sort of magic that's brought into every cinema piece that they create that you wouldn't catch somewhere else.
Mm. Yeah, with the international films, I always watch them with the lens of
Mhm.
this is saying something about that culture and that society, what they value, what they revere, what they're struggling with. And there's a quote that goes something like, or the quote is, all art is autobiography. The pearl is the oyster's autobiography,
Mhm.
or something like that. But I think that's very true. That anything, or actually, let me ask you this. How much of yourself do you see in the projects that you create? What is it of you that you put in there?
I think I put everything of myself in my films because if I didn't, then I wouldn't create it. If there are certain collaborations that maybe there's me, there's somebody else, but I never create a story. I don't write something and produce it unless that is my voice. I don't want to I don't want to put anything, like put my name on anything that I'm not proud of. And I don't feel a sense of, what's the term? A sense of, yani, bismillah, just a acknowledgement, being proud of it. Because I wouldn't like if it's something that I 100% wouldn't agree on, if it's something that doesn't align with my values, then I'm not going to put my name on it. And that has happened before. I've even PA'd on a project, not anything big, just helped.
What
And they
does
were
that mean?
a
P8.
PA, a production assistant.
Mm.
So I've done PA work on a short film. And because of a certain scene that was shot, I didn't feel comfortable putting my name on it. So if my name is going to go on a film, whether it's something as a PA, if it's assistant producer, director, whatever the role is, whatever I'm being credited for, if it doesn't align with who I am as a person, my faith, my values, my character, then I'm not gonna create it. So of course, it doesn't have to be like an exact replica of who I am, but it has to emulate the values that I have. I'm not gonna create something that I'm not gonna be able that I'm gonna have to stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, say that I put my name on it and get judged and have that on my what do you call it? Just something that I'm being asked about on the day of judgment. So I would say a lot of it, all of myself is in my projects.
Hmm. You know, from an outsider's perspective, it seems like your journey has been smooth sailing.
Mm-hmm.
There's this glow about your projects. But I wonder, what are the struggles you faced as a Muslim filmmaker? How
Mm-hmm.
do people just turn you away because of it often, or
Um, I'd say it's being a Muslim filmmaker, but also being a female Muslim filmmaker. And then even adding being a female Palestinian Muslim filmmaker, that it's just not in the market in Western film industry. So you kind of have to create your own stuff. So the fact that I'm creating Palestinian work already is not in my favor in the sense of the Hollywood film industry, but that's why I pursue it myself. And I find people who are passionate about the work that I do. It can get difficult with the projects that I decide to do or don't do if I'm approached with opportunities that I have to decline because of my Islamic beliefs, which have happened. I had to turn down some job offers because although it would be awesome to work on projects and continue to build my resume and new film experiences, just to learn, I don't do it at the expense of my Islamic faith. So that can be, I don't even want to say it's a hindrance. I don't find it, the thing that's pushing me back. If anything, it's pushing me forward. But those are some of the hardships that I experience. And again, which is something I recently learned, I would say the past few months, being a female filmmaker, that also plays a role in how you are viewed as the quote, like the leader, the director of your projects. Alhamdulillah, like I do a good job of setting the tone and the scene on my productions, but I feel like, especially as I grow in the industry, as I grow as a filmmaker and inshallah work on bigger productions, there's always going to be that element of having to prove yourself 10 times over because you're a woman, you're a female who quote like can't get the job done like a guy can because you're hitting these emotions, you're feeling these emotions that I find as women we're just it's easier for us to express our vulnerabilities, which is an amazing thing. And it should be for both men and women, but unfortunately it isn't. So when we do, I feel like there's this idea that, oh, this person is feeling these emotions, they can't handle all this work. So I always say I I do my job in doing the work that I do, but also never being afraid to do it as myself, if that makes any sense. I'm coming at it as a Muslim Palestinian female filmmaker, and that's not going to be the easiest thing with every part of my identity before the word filmmaker. So it can be a little more hard, but I'm not afraid to approach it the way that I am and doing it with authenticity and honesty. So alhamdulillah, like no matter how difficult it gets because of who I am, I do my best not to let that get to me. And I do my best in, again, treating everybody with respect, but also doing what I need to do to run the projects that I'm running.
how do you keep your faith strong?
Honestly, it's just keeping that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala active each time. I think that no matter whatever happens, whether something negative or something positive, I know that Allah is doing it for my sake and that it's meant to happen. So there's never really a part like a time I try not to let it get to that where I'm just so low and I just don't believe that I'm gonna make it in this industry or that the things that happen, the rejections I get, which happens a lot, by the way, I get a lot, a lot of rejections out here. So I just remind myself that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always going to be there for me. He knows what's best for me. And I have to do my job in continuing to strengthen my relationship with him. And knowing that no matter what anything, no matter what anybody says and or whatever the action that happens, the the rejections, whatever it may be, the opportunities I have to let go, no matter what it is, that I trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. And it's a big thing, right? You have to go into it, you have to go into life just trusting Allah, no matter how difficult life gets. So I think that's truly what helps me maintain my iman and my faith. Because without it, I don't think I would have continued as a filmmaker.
And how did you come to this realization? Because it's one thing to be
Hmm.
taught faith, it's another to experience it.
Yeah. I think about that sometimes, about how you are taught faith. You grow up in a Muslim household, if you do, and you are brought up with the ideas of Islam and the ideas and the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But maintaining that in your adult life and creating that sense of that relationship with Allah, that's on you when you're an adult, right? So I always say I think it's the sincerity, to be honest, just being sincere.
That's the word.
Yeah, because I always thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I have the faith that I have because without him I wouldn't, right? He guides those he wants to guide and he people are astray because of his like who he chooses to leave astray. So I'm always very thankful and I don't take it for granted. I'm very happy to be a Muslim and I'm very happy that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put this iman. And all I can really do is continuously ask him to maintain the iman and strengthen the iman and the faith because it would just really suck to have a terrible life and then have a terrible akhirah. So I'm okay with having the
Yeah,
struggles of this
that would be
life.
terrible.
Yeah, I'm okay with struggling, and Allah doesn't make life all black, right? There's beauty, there's ease, and there's goodness in our lives, no matter how difficult it gets. So I'm okay with living a whatever the ends up becoming my life, right? We talked about whether people are going to know us, whether we when we die, how many people, how much fame, how much money, how much this, how much like how did you succeed in this life? That question of did you succeed? I think ultimately I have goals for this life, inshallah, that I believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant me. But even if I died the way that I am with the iman that I have and nothing to show, like in this life, I am okay so long as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives me a good akhirah, right? That's the important things. That's why you have to prioritize too. If you put worldly things before Allah and before your iman, then you're always going to fail at this life. You're never going to have the goodness of either. So prioritizing the things and having that sincerity to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know who chooses, everybody has the right to choose whether they want to or not, but that's how I would want to go myself.
It was a few years ago, I heard it from Hamza Yusuf, and he was talking about creativity and how
Mhm.
he argued you can't have beautiful art. You can't be. I'm not, this is the way I'm putting it. I don't know if this is exactly the way he said it, but it's something to the effect of you have to have that faith to put out that good art.
Yeah.
If you're not living a very faithful life, it will show up in your work. It
Hmm.
will show up. And I reflect on that a lot. And
Hmm.
I think it's a very important component of being a creative.
Hmm.
And maybe some people don't believe that for themselves. I don't know. But in my experience, that has certainly been a thing.
Hmm.
If my faith is up, then the work is up.
I 100% I agree, but I think I'm also thinking of it in a general sense of people questioning whether if why bad people have good things in life, right? Why do bad people get to live beautiful lives? Why do bad people get to be millionaires and be famous or whatever the case is? So I believe that you could even be given creativity if you don't have that faith. Not for myself, but for people who don't. And yet ultimately it amounts to nothing if you don't have that iman though. You could be given creativity as a equality to, getting something in this worldly life. But how important is that when you have to face Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be there during your akhirah? Because 60 years, 70, 80 years, if that, of a good life, of having the things that you want, ultimately it's not going to equal an eternity as Allah's enemy, you know? It's not going to equal eternity of joy in paradise. If you if you have that iman, alhamdulillah, because that's how you will get that, inshallah. But that equality, right? That lack of creativity is what I'm saying. Like there's no equality to that in being in Jannat al-Firdaus right now. With that being said, that's why I say we all have goals and we all have things that we want to attain, but we always have to prioritize what the important things are. And that's why I always say before anything, no matter what opportunities I'm given, no matter whatever it is, if fame came my way, if money came my way, I would never jeopardize the relationship with Allah and that faith. Sorry, I'm just thinking about it as well. It's like that's what I love about people with Iman because we all think the same, that we would put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala first and Islam first. But it's unfortunate to think that there are people out there who don't really care about these things. They prioritize everything I just mentioned, money, fame over what's important. Even family. Some people prioritize family before their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the only way I do agree, the only way you truly strengthen those for the sake of Allah is by turning to Allah. And I don't want to sound like I'm going down a rabbit hole, but the idea is just like that you can have worldly things, you can have the joys of this world and not have a connection to your spirituality, but at the cost of what is what I'm trying to say.
There's a price for everything. Okay? You know, um, this has been a fun conversation. I appreciate you being here, and I think we talked about some really important things. I just had some closing notes before I asked you about your closing thoughts. One of them, going back to Val Kilmer.
Yeah.
Again, you didn't know him, but
Yeah.
he was diagnosed or he got throat cancer, basically. That was his undoing. He was facing that for nearly a decade now. Actually, I think it's over a decade.
Mhm.
But I think it was interesting that that came to him
Mhm.
when he was at a point where it seemed like things were going really good for him. He was blacklisted from Hollywood for a few
Mhm.
years, and he made this turnaround with doing these Mark Twain plays around the country. And
Mhm.
I was blown away by the performances and the writing, and I thought it was great. And I think it's so interesting that at that time in his life, where it seemed as if he had reached an apex,
Mhm.
where he was really going to make a comeback and turn around,
Mhm.
things went south for him. And just from a Muslim perspective, I think that's interesting too, because that's that's Allah's decree. That's how it happened. But also just that concept of Nazar, evil eye. Like man, he really could have made a turnaround, but things went south for him. So I just thought it was interesting. And there's this movie called Babylon. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's an interesting moment in there where Brad Pitt's character, he was a big star for a while,
Mhm.
and then at some point he's in the middle age now, and his career's not kicking it off. People don't like his movies; they laugh at him, and he just doesn't understand it. And so he speaks to a publicist about this, a journalist, and she says to him, "There's no secret to it. I mean, you're old news now.
Mm.
But be grateful because you were a part of this industry,
Mhm.
and with all these films that you've made, after you're dead, your ghosts and the ghosts of everybody else that's been a part of this, they'll dine together there. That's all you have." And so it's like it's interesting from like a non-Muslim sort of perspective of a hereafter, of an afterlife. So
It's
I
not
just
fun.
wanted to get those things in.
It's not fun. Why would you want to dine with the dead when you could have Jannah? It's like, wait, the idea you said was Brad Pitt was basically, it was Brad Pitt, right? You mentioned?
It was his character in that movie.
Oh,
Yeah,
so the character, not the actual actor.
not the actual actor.
Okay,
No.
because I was thinking, I remember Brad Pitt still being kind of relevant in the film world.
No, he is. He very much is.
Yeah, he's
Brad
a
is at
big
the
time actor,
apex.
A-lister and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I get what you're saying, the character having been somebody who was an A-list actor and being told, hey, it's okay, you're not relevant anymore, but when you die, you'll die and you'll be with all these other A-listers. And
Yeah, the ghosts of
that's
every
not
of your
fun.
performances in the
Who
movies.
would
Yeah.
want to do that though? That to me, they're basically, and I get it, of course, I'm speaking from the character's experience and what he's being told, but the idea of you're pursuing this thing, you've done it for so many years, and that's what I'm saying. I mean, you mentioned he was an actor, not Kevin, I'm sorry. You said
Val
his
Kilmer?
Van Homer. Sorry. um,
He was Batman.
he was an actor.
He was an actor, yeah.
Okay. He so say that you were telling me that he was trying to turn it around, right? But it didn't work
Well, I don't
because
know if he was trying to necessarily, but I mean, he did really good job with his creativity in these plays, even though he was blacklisted from big name movies.
okay. So I kind of lost my train of thought. So I don't remember where I was going with that. But I think that, for example, that pursuing this fame and well, it's even harder, right? When you have everything and then having it taken away, but being told, hey, you'll have it all back in the akhirah. You'll be with the people that you are with, other A-listers, and that's your kind of heaven. That is the issue as well, right? Because you're still told that this one desire that you have in this life is ultimately going to come back to you in the next. And
Mm.
the actor that I was thinking about, Jonathan Brandis, who killed himself, one of the things that broke my heart is he was a child actor, very famous child actor. By the
And I
time,
don't know him.
yeah,
That's the interesting
he
thing.
he was in films like Ladybugs and this other film with Chuck Norris where they were doing karate, and I think those were some of his most popular films, and he was in a show called Sequest. And he was like very known in the 90s, early 90s. He fell into depression from what I know of his story. He fell into a depression when he reached his adulthood because he was trying to transition from being a child actor to a serious adult actor. And you know how that can be. Sometimes knowing people who are trying to maintain their fame, and I know it's not about fame, but just that line of work, and there's such a transition and such a difficult period there. Not everybody makes that transition from being a child actor to an adult actor. So because that was all he knew, and because people are fake, very fake and fickle, they will love you one day and hate you the next. Because he
Yeah.
was so famous at his young age, but that went away so quickly when he was in his mid 20s. He passed away at 27.
Wow, 27 Club.
Yeah, that's like a couple years. That's my sister's age. She just turned 27, and she probably doesn't want me to say that. She's like, "I'm getting old." But so him. So the idea of, okay, this is all that there is to life is, the work that I've been doing. But it's also hard because that's all you really knew, right? You're engulfed in this world where you're constantly acting. I'm sure school was on set. I'm sure they didn't go to regular school at one point. You kind of have to get away from that so that when you reach that adulthood and you're not relevant anymore and your stories, the stories that you're writing, because he would write a script and it would be turned down, like everything that he's trying to do in his adult life that he quickly had in his child life. That I can only imagine the kind of depression that makes somebody roll into before they make the choice that you can't come back from. So bringing back to Brad Pitt's character, so that being told that you were once relevant and now you're not, if that person only has acting, only has fame and money as their number one, then that's the kind of choice that you would make ultimately in the end because you have nothing else. You have nothing more to believe in. You have nothing more to uh just move towards a path. That's why when I was talking about prioritizing what's important to you is so important. That's why even though I love filmmaking, I love writing and directing, and inshallah bi'ithnillah, I pray that one day it'll make it to Hollywood and be like the biggest thing. But if khalas, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't write that for me, it's not the end of the world. I if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wrote that I would die alone. I mean, it would sound very morbid, but like die alone, if die trying to visit my country, die this, I'm okay with that because I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being the person that I am and having alhamdulillah and inshallah, may He continue giving us our faith, having the faith that we have, I'm okay dying with that than living to be 100 with everything in this life, but nothing to show for it in the next. Which is kind of, I feel like I said that a lot earlier, but I just want to close it off that way as well. The
Yeah, that was a
importance.
great way to close it off. And actually, what's Babylon, that film, that scene with Brad Pitt was the best scene, and it's etched into my mind. And the writing is so strong, and he walks out of that room sad. He had to face the reality, and spoiler, he actually kills himself at the end of that film.
I
He
didn't even
shoots
know that.
himself.
SubhanAllah, you see that?
Yeah, you didn't even know that, and
I
that was
spoiled
it.
the film. I mean, I basically wrote the film before I knew the ending of the film.
Yeah, no, it's interesting, but yeah, with all that being said, um, a person should never cease to strive, I think. Yeah. But yeah, thank you again, Shahd, for being here. I appreciate this. Do you have any closing thoughts? Any final things that you felt like you wanted to
Um,
say? Do you need a chance to? Something on your mind that you wanted to express?
well, since we talked about death a lot, let's end on a happy note, inshallah. Just know that bi'ithnillah, there's goodness coming your way. It's not all bad. It's not all negative. Um, the hardships that you're going through are temporary. And no matter how many hardships come our way, because we're always going to be tested with hardships, maintaining our iman and trusting in God and trusting in Allah is what's going to help us overcome them. And that's what is going to help us reach that level of peace and that level of, I wasn't saying iman, but true, level of peace and tranquility. So I hope that we're all able to reach that level of content, inshallah.
Yeah, yeah, great stuff. And I think it'd be amiss if I didn't mention this.
Mhm.
Uh, it's always been fascinating to me how the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is, by my books, the most immortalized man in history. I mean, no one really reaches that level. It doesn't matter. You mentioned Elvis, Michael Jackson, but
Yeah.
no one can reach that level. So interesting stuff.
Yeah. And even if he's also ironically like, I don't think he's the most talked about, but people have a lot of um ignorant things to say about the Prophet, peace be upon him. So, with that being said, we all know where his level is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, no matter the hardships, no matter what people called him in his life and during our time people say disgusting things, he's still gonna have that place in paradise with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why I say the things, the negative that is left behind that you didn't do yourself, but just negativity that people bring. And the kind of life that you lived is important through your actions, if that makes any sense. So it doesn't matter what people say, it doesn't matter whether people are for you being Muslim, for you pushing the idea and the belief of Islam, as long as you're on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's radar and on his good side. That's the importance.
Cool beans.
Yes, sir.
Well, I suppose until next time, man.
Next time, inshallah.